like most people of my generation, I've seen all of the Disney classics, or so I thought. It suddenly occurred to me that I haven't seen Hercules. When I started watching it, I kind of had a few flashbacks, but then I feel like when I got further into it, I didn't recognise a lot of it, and I think I maybe have just seen bits of it. Watching it now as an adult, I didn't like it as much as I expected to. Maybe if it had that nostalgic element for me, I might have enjoyed it more, but watching it, what I'm considering for the first time as a 29-year-old, there were bits of it that I really liked. And I think if you're into this kind of narrative, then you'll like it. I prefer Disney stories that are a bit more fun, light-hearted, brightly coloured. This one, to me, has more of a kind of Aladdin feel to it. It's dusty, a lot of brown colours, and obviously that shouldn't make a difference, but it does. When you're watching things, certainly if you're watching, say, a Disney villain animation, they're often a lot darker and they're not as engaging for certainly the younger mind. But for me personally, this just doesn't really do that much for me. It was released in 1997, directed by Ron Clements and John Musker, and it's got a pretty great voice cast, by which I mean Danny DeVito. He voices Phil, and I absolutely love that. I did enjoy his role in this, and I have to say, one thing that I do love about this is the dialogue. The humour for me definitely comes from the wit of the dialogue, and most of that wit, maybe all of that wit, I would not have picked up on as a child. So maybe as a child I would have preferred the visuals, I would have preferred Pegasus. Baby Pegasus is one of the most adorable things I've ever seen. I would have enjoyed that aspect of it, but as an adult, not so much, whereas I actually kind of enjoyed the humour and the wit. The narrative itself obviously is pretty interesting. Hercules is the son of Zeus and Hera, and he must become, he's basically stripped of his immortality. He becomes a real person, as it were, and he needs to become a true hero. And he goes on this quest to find out his identity and who he really was, and technically who he really is, and who he is in his core. And I like that, I like a good quest story. I like anything that's based on historical fact, anything that's based on historical legends and myths. I don't know if that's an oxymoron or not, but, I like that aspect. It's educational. I probably had heard of Zeus when this came out. I was 5, no, definitely not. Maybe a few years later I kind of was aware of Zeus and the gods. But I think even if this is an introduction to them for you, it's a pretty good foundation. The narrative progresses reasonably well. I just found that I didn't really care. I wasn't emotionally invested in it. I wasn't that bothered about what happened or what happened to Hercules. There just wasn't anything in it to keep me engaged, apart from a couple of songs. Obviously, over the years I've owned many Disney music compilation albums, and there have always been at least 2 Hercules songs on there. I love I Can Go the Distance, or I believe it's just called Go the Distance, and it's brilliant. I absolutely love it. I also really like I Won't Say I'm in Love. They're 2 great songs, and one of the things that kept me engaged with this and kept me watching it was the knowledge that those songs would appear at some point. So that was pretty exciting. I'm glad I've seen it. I can now say that I've seen it. Maybe I'll watch it again. I think with Disney films you can always watch them and get something out of them. And as I said, I did like the dialogue. But for me, it's just not as engaging as most other Disney films from this time. I prefer the fun of the Aristocats or the excitement of being, in the park with the Dalmatians. Although actually the Dalmatians has some pretty gritty scenes in it. It's not a bad film, but for me, it's never going to be my favourite.